with my dad. My dad always ran his seafood over the road. Mails, to Richmond or somewhere close. A few more dollars. Not mainly because he didn't want to market here. We did market some here to larger buyers. He was just a small, maybe buy from his brothers, because he had about 6 brothers that worked on the water. So it was kind of like always been, since my granddad, like a family unit. My granddad never bought anything. He just, he grew up, he was born in the early 1900s and grew up during the Depression. And I heard my grandma say, I asked my grandma, how did they live during the Depression? She said they didn't even know it was the Depression because they never had anything anyway. You know what I mean? They didn't even really know that in the 20s that it was, it was bad, because it wasn't nothing here anyway. You were just living by the land. So my dad, as he got older, my dad's brothers sold some of their product, Washington, maybe down in the Carolinas, people would come in, but never as reaching out as far, because you didn't have the freight trucks and the network of transportation that we have this day and time. As I got older, I guess he was just enough old school. He didn't want but so much change, and he's like was coming to an empty nest, and he didn't want to take on so much. But he had an empty nest like myself. I've got 2 left at like 50s, so he still had a lot of time. Obviously, he's still doing it, And I'm 48 now, going 49. So I guess in your mind you think you're over when you're not really over. And then you realize you had a whole lot more to go. As far as, your work time or when you're going to retire, what you want to do. So he kind of was, he said, if you want to do more, kind of go out on your own to do more, because I'm like at this level. And my wife's father was a Vietnam vet and worked at Navy mine. His father was a waterman, and also had brothers that were watermen. So putting the 2, high school love, had no intentions of, didn't even know what we were going to do as careers, me and my wife. We just knew that we wanted to get married. And then, it was quick money work on my dad. You go work a job for, as a non, had no degree, go work a job for like, say, $15 max in the 90s, which would get more than, and he knows, in the 90s, $15 an hour would go further than, that's like $7 an hour now, but you still was meager income. Working with my dad, I could make $2,000 a week at the same time, So you were like, yeah, we want to do that. So working with my dad more, and that's when I really started to get interested in working on the water, because you were looking at dollars and cents and where you were going to take your family, and then it kind of progressed to you had to have more. You're always more. No matter how much money you make in life, you always need more, because more you get, more you spend, it seems. More, bigger house, bigger yard, go on more vacations, get another car, have more kids, have grandkids. So when my wife got pregnant with the second child, it didn't make sense for her to have children in daycare or someone watching them. And she had a pretty good job as a computer programmer when internet first came out, and she was creating programs, back when it was just coming off of dot matrix, when the internet was like fresh. She went to school, and I did too, actually, as a welder. I thought about going in a NASA co-op program, but I couldn't. I already had it in my blood then. It was no turning back. So I stopped with that. But I did learn a good trade. How to weld, I use it a lot for my own self. Saves me a lot of money. And we went into starting to run some stuff over the road, and the internet really broke that, because the seafood business, it was no technology in it. Everybody was, and this is coming from someone else, someone said, yeah, when you were advertising on the internet, other people that were in the seafood business were advertising with hats and t-shirts still. They did no outreach. So I could see that for about a 10-year stretch, maybe 8-year stretch, we were marketing a lot better than the people that were around us. And the people that were around this area were aging people that were digressing. So every time someone went out of business or passed on and got out of business and the family didn't want anything to do with it, we would absorb their business. So we kept growing by absorbing. And you know, if you're the only one, if you're holding the whole deck, it's kind of hard to lose, or most of it. You got a lot of aces. So then I guess I would say, by the time we built this boat right here in 2002, did you see my dad's boat in the backyard? Mm-hmm. Larger boat, Dayspring? You saw it in the back?
I saw it, yeah.
Okay. I worked that boat my dad got off that boat in 93. And I worked that boat from like 93, 94. I was going to go into Coast Guard. And that's another whole long story. Didn't go into Coast Guard. Started working that boat in 93, 94. Got married in 95. Worked it until 2002. That's when we built this boat right here. 2002 seems like it was yesterday, but it was actually, 21 years ago. That seems like I just built that boat. That's how time fast, how like the summers go by, like click, 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 click. She's smiling because she knows what I'm saying. In that time period we built the new boat, and we needed to get a little bit bigger, and we needed to market, and they were regulating us heavy. And we started buying crabs in the wintertime from a lot of the dredgers, that when they were dredging crabs, which they catch it in the wintertime, they hibernate, they go into the mud. If y'all familiar with what the crabs do, the summertime they're out swimming around eating, to be simple, and then in the wintertime they just kind of like lay down and like just do like bears do, they just rest themselves. Then in the spring they'll pop back out. The crabs we would buy in the wintertime, they cut that out. Well, we had already got a business model wrapped around having crabs in the winter, like a year-round crab. And I was working that site part of the industry too, catching winter crabs. Well, oysters weren't a thing then. Okay, so we didn't have the oyster industry in Virginia then that we have now. It was fish and crabs. That was pretty much everything we had. So we had some family and knew a lot of people that had were transients from here to South Carolina, Charleston, Beaufort area. So we looked south to start getting crabs to fill our winter markets that weren't there. Let
me ask a question about the dredging law.
Okay.
That's your business. So, I mean, dredging, right? Obviously, that's super sustainable for the environment. It shows the topsoil, gets rid of everything on the bottom. But obviously, right when dredging obviously creates you're able to catch a lot more crabs that way. But it's how do you, as a fisherman, balance kind of the sustainability of the fishery with your ability to produce, and kind of and grow your business at the same time?
Okay, so your question was about how did I feel about dredging, or?
Yeah, so how did dredging affect your ability to grow your business?
Well, that's what I was getting at. Because we didn't have the dredging. Well, actually, you would think that dredging, to touch back on that before I go on a rabbit chase, the touch back on that, even my dad said it, that dredging crabs was probably the poorest way to catch crabs, most inefficient way to catch crabs, and he's right. Because you're blindly dragging around. You got a good idea about where they lay at, but there's so many variables when you're dragging a piece of iron on the bottom. You got tide that can. What a lot of people don't understand is the mindset behind that is all angles. Okay, so the more chain that you're letting out, you have a diver on it, and if I had a dredge close, there's one over there. I'll show you when I walk over there. There's an angled plate on the dredge that creates hydro force. It gives you, it's like a spoiler on a car. So they didn't know it, but they were letting the chain out. Maybe they did know, but it was, it's nothing mathematical. It's trial and error. You let it out a certain distance. The tide's doing this, the wind's doing that. You let out 150 foot at the roller, which is at the back of the boat, or 175. You usually let it out double the amount of water that you're in. But you're really trying to get the angle of the dredge so that the spoiler, as we'll call it, or the hydro force on the dredge isn't too great on the bottom where you're digging in too much, and isn't too light where you're up too high. So you could figure, and you've only got a few hours to work. So if you're playing with this and figuring it out, and the whole dynamics of out there can change from hour to hour, which with tide, the moon, the day before, the wind shifts. So it might not be like it was the day before in the exact same spot. Grass shifts in the area. You might not be successful. And, and then the crab, it might not be crabs there. You might be trying. So when they caught a lot of crabs, there was a lot there. There was like a lot. And I've seen the times where we caught a tremendous amount of crabs, but there was a lot there. I've had guys that we had about 10, 15, 20 boats selling us when they stopped the dredge fishery. They dredged down on the southern side of the Thimble Channel, which is down near Ocean View, down on the other side of Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, in that area. When you go across the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, if you look towards the Thimble Light, all that area, that's the Thimble Channel. They couldn't catch a basket a day. A week later, 2 weeks later, they set the crab pots, so many crabs we couldn't sell them. It was that many crabs there, but they couldn't catch them. So a lot of times, if you're not catching, doesn't mean it's not there. Like we worked today oyster dredging, and I was about far as here to that brick house, or maybe a little closer, from crab potters. They were pulling up pots with 1 and 2 crabs in a pot, and we were seeing 8 to 10 every time I pulled the dredge in, and we were throwing them back. Just because they're not trapping does not mean they're not there. It's just like people. If you're going home from work, just because there's not people at the gas station doesn't mean there's not people going by or they're not around. When people decide that they want to stop for something, they do. Crabs are the same way. They're just creatures of habit, whether they're mating, eating, cycling. I don't know if they relax, but whatever they're doing, just because you're not catching them, they don't have to go in that pot and eat that bait. You know, they don't have to do what, just because you're set there where they're at, they don't have to go in. If they're not interested, they don't do it. There's reasons why they weren't catching, and I had a pretty good idea why they weren't, but it was amazing to see that while you're working. And it was 2 boats actually that came by. So, you know, you knew it wasn't just that one guy's gear. You're watching two gear types. And one guy came up to me pretty close with his gear because he had set it close to where I was working.
Why did you think they weren't catching? What would you?
Well, once the water temperature rises to a certain, when they first come out the bottom, they're hungry. They've been laying down. They're like super hungry, so they eat. They'll eat anything. You can almost put them overboard, nothing in them, and you'll catch crabs because they're hungry. They're moving around. Once they're already been impregnated from the year before, so they have a gestation period, just like a woman when she's impregnated. So their time is going to, when the water temperature, I think, this is just my opinion, water temperature and daylight has something to do with it, but this year years where it's warmer earlier would prove that water temperature has more to do with triggering crabs to go into a cycle, because here we have sponge crabs already started and we're at the 21st. The earliest I've ever seen them since I've been crabbing in like 30 years is the 19th of April. We did have sponges the 19th, but a few, just to start. So generally we have them 2 weeks after Mother's Day. Mother's Day is on the 12th this year. So that's usually in the middle of May. So we're a month early. So the only thing that never changes, if you ask yourself, what never changes here in Virginia, in Gloucester County, every year, what never changes? Never. It's always the same every day on April 21st. It's always the same no matter what. It's always the same. Or very, very, very close. Is that the amount of daylight? The amount of daylight always is the same. You have the equinox the same. You have the summer sol. You have all these the same. So I see the crabs are triggered some by daylight and some things by temperature. Some things daylight tells them, because when they migrate in the fall, no matter what the temperature is, the salinity and the daylight triggers them. If it's the low salinity where they're at, it forces them to come down more because they can't stand but so low a salinity, but they want to be as far up as they can. So they bury as high. This is not just Virginia, this is everywhere. They bury as high as they can. But daylight triggers them to start schooling together, and temperature will trigger the females in the summertime will kind of get kind of get dormant when it gets really, really hot. They kind of don't want to eat, and they go off where it's deep at, and they kind of are like, you know, and let me back up on that. There's the females that seem like they're down in the lower part of the river and higher salinity, and say like 20 parts per thousand, 15 and above, seem like they trap and will tolerate a warmer weather. The females that live and exist, and there is several different crabs that exist in different salinities seem like they don't want to eat, because you'll have sheds all summer. All these females shedding, and you never see them. They're not trapping. We're catching nothing but males and 1 bushel of females. And then as soon as the water temperature drops down like below 70, in the 60s, you start seeing them come inshore. You can sit way offshore and see a few and see they're there, but they just don't want to eat. They must just slow down, and I don't think they hibernate. I think they just don't feel like eating. They just lay there, but they're off there. And that's why we have like so many crabs in the fall. When the water cools up, it allows them to come in, but they'll just come in wherever they're at. But when the daylight gets to about the 15th of September, here in this area, it seems like they start migrating down. You can see them start moving down.
Over the course of the last 30 years, as climate change has been warming up the water.
Yeah.
Have you seen any kind of major changes in behavior based off kind of that?
I've seen in the last 30 years, I've seen us have ice when we started crabbing March 17th and couldn't crab, and were worried that we weren't going to make any money. And then I've seen it be like this year where, it was ridiculous warm. So, no, I think the only effect is that we're getting more, because, okay, like this year, for instance, I was telling somebody yesterday, if it warms up quicker, you're going to have an extra shed, an extra peeler run. Well, they grow by molting. The water temperature controls how many times they can molt. They'll keep molting as long as it's warm. If it never got cold here, they just I believe they would just keep doing their thing until they couldn't do it anymore, because they're just naturally growing. But you never know that unless it stayed warm here. But it seems like they would. We've already got a peeler run. Peelers and sponge crabs, the females that are going through the gestation period. And I went on a rabbit hunt. That's why they wouldn't trap. When they get sick, they're like my daughter and my daughter-in-law. She didn't want to eat red meat. Now she does. She was 4 months pregnant. She was getting sick on red meat. Couldn't eat it. And we had her over for Monday night, and she was like this. You know what I mean? She loves pickles, but she doesn't eat them, and now she's eating them by the jar. You know what I mean? So I think crabs are the same way.
To clarify, you have sponge crabs, you're saying? You have field crabs, you have blue crabs. What other species? Kind of discuss the different species you're targeting.
Well, you have a male and a female crab. Mm-hmm. He starts as a baby. The crabs start as an immature, like a child. And as they grow, they have to molt to grow. Okay, so that's your peelers. So every time that they need to molt, like a snake sheds its skin, they shed their shell and they grow bigger.
And a soft shell?
Yeah, so you get a soft shell crab.
Okay.
To make more crabs, y'all know about the birds and the bees. The crabs get together. She goes through a gestation period. She gets a belly on her like a woman, and she has eggs, and that's a sponge crab. After, she usually does it about 4 times here in Virginia, is they usually stop around Labor Day. So you usually get your first one in May. So you figure May, June, July, August. August, the end of the month is Labor Day is usually the first Monday in September, so that's 4. This year, being as early, you're going to get 5. You might get 6. Same thing with the peelers. So if you get 6 times or 5 times of babies versus 4 times, what does that tell you? Logically, you would have more what? Crabs. So colder winters will do winter kill, some that bury in shallows or whatnot. And that has a lot to do with winter kill is how the salinity when they bury. If they bury higher in the rivers and then you have the river freezes across, obviously it was colder there than it was in 70 feet off in the middle of the bay by the channel. And they're more susceptible to a winter kill. So where they lay at is more susceptible to what happens to them, you know what I mean, their environment. And they're not prejudiced to being anywhere. They just get where they're comfortable because they can go anywhere they want to go. They're not governed by government, state, nothing. It's just God. You know what I mean? So they do what they want to do.
And speaking of where they're comfortable, so water quality obviously has a huge effect.
Water quality has got better.
So discuss that.
Yeah, water quality and the oysters have shown it. The oysters have helped a lot. The water quality has got better probably. I would say you could see it just daily. No testing. We're not doing water samples, but you could just see the clarity of the water, the cleanliness of it. I'd say in the last 4 or 5 years, and I don't know to contribute that to I know that they were cutting back some of what the farmers are doing on the runoff, and the oysters are filters. They're filtering water, and we've got a larger and larger oyster population. So I'd imagine there's many factors why our water quality is getting better, but it's good that it is, no matter why it's happening. It's good.
So a single oyster can filter out 50 gallons of water a day. Is
Yep.
that correct? So kind of discuss their capabilities a little bit more, how they kind of act as that kind of control.
Well, the oysters and the crabs coincide, because you'll catch crabs in or around oysters. They're all, the oysters are a source of food for crabs. They'll eat fish, they'll eat shellfish. They have a diet, so they're not going to just eat one thing. They're not going to eat fish. If you put them in a tank, which we had aquarium with crabs in it for the kids at Crabs Express, we would put stuff in there and like test them. Like, I wonder what they're going to eat. They would eat like mussels, and then sometimes they would choose the mussels over a piece of fish, and sometimes you'd put vegetation in there, and you come back the next morning and they would have ate all the vegetation and left the mussels behind. So it's whatever they were interested in, whatever. And I'm pretty sure, it's just like people, maybe they have different interests, I don't know. But the oysters, I think, or I can see that the oysters grow. We got more and more oysters. It looks like it's helping feed the crab, but in the same turn, it makes it a little bit harder as a crabber to catch something if there's natural food right there. So you're saying, hey, come over here and eat this, when there's all the natural food they want right there that they're already, eating. So it makes it a little tougher at times, depending on what species and what time of the year you're, because they want to eat shellfish, it seems like, more certain times of the year than in other times, when it's cooler.
So before we transition to talking about the oyster industry, I want to ask you a couple more questions about the crabs. So let's discuss, so you're mentioning how the water quality in Chesapeake Bay has improved in the last couple of years. Obviously, Chesapeake Bay is a case study in taking a really bad, and something that was almost destroyed and kind of bringing it back from the dead in a fantastic way. In your 30 or 40 years, kind of discuss that transition, how the health of Chesapeake Bay has improved, and how you've kind of seen as a result increased crabs as a result of that.
Well, I mean, it's been the only thing that I can go by is what you see on a daily basis. Like I said, you're not doing scientific tests, you're not doing water samples, you're just watching things happen, and you're not going out, doing a 1 week trial or a year. You're living it. You're getting up, you're coming down. You look, you see the tide down, you see the tide up. You're looking at it every day, day in, day out. And it looks like that because the water has got cleaner, that certain things have overcome other things. So there's always pluses to everything, pros and cons to everything. And I think that the water quality, you want the water quality up. You don't want the water quality down. But you could say, why don't we have the fish that we used to have? And you talk to watermen. If you ask them that, the first thing, they'll tell you all sorts of different reasons why we don't have fish. Whether it's climate, why do we have shrimp, so many more shrimp now than we had? Is it we're going through a cycle? Is it something that we had years ago? And, we cycling. I believe that everything in a turn cycles, like the earth is cycling. And like it seems like the old comes around, even trends and fashions and everything. But even the oysters, you look at it, it looks like they're in highs and lows. The water quality definitely helped them. It really did. I don't think anybody moved. I don't think VIMS or the VMRC moved enough shells to impact, or planted enough this or that to impact all of that out there. I mean, they can do a lot, but there are only a few. It was a lot of different factors that came together, and it didn't hurt anything. But something that had to have been running off into the bay made a big difference in the last 4 or 5 years. And maybe it just cleaned up to where you could see it. But it got so for a while when we were crabbing, I guess in 2000, Yeah, it was 2002, about the time I built this boat, to 2006, 2007. It would be really volatile. You would have a lot of product in the spring like we had now, and then it would fall off, or you wouldn't see hardly anything in the summer, and it would seem almost like we didn't have a fishery with crabs. And oysters people weren't even talking about oysters then. It was an oyster industry, but it was like this big. Now it's like this big. But you can see that the population of the crab has grown over the last, say, 20 years, from 2002 to 2022, because I haven't even begun this season. We're still full with oysters because the market's down. And I'm going to fish to the money, but the market is down, and so we're not fishing. But you can see that the crabs have cycled. Every time they're cycling, it looks like it's a few more and a few more. And it makes you wonder whether it's the water quality, or whether you're going through a cycle, or whether it's tighter regulation, which that had to have helped some. They said last fall we didn't have as many. Well, last summer, the winter dredge survey from the winter before was poor. It was worse than it had been in 20 some odd years. So they restricted us back, which didn't really hurt us economically, because there wasn't enough H-2B visas to process crabs. So therefore, it kind of all worked out. No one sat down. They don't regulate it to economics. They regulate it to what's out there. But it did work out economically, and them stretching it over into the spring, it's helped economically this spring, because we have the same reflection of last year with visas and labor and the economy. Y'all got stuff invested. You know what the economy's doing. They're talking about de-dollarization and all this stuff. So people are not wanting to spend like they did. So it's helped. And them not letting them catch as many crabs, it's bound to leave more behind, and that's never a bad thing, to leave more behind. So that part of the regulation has really helped, I think, as far as your population. You're working less for more. That's the worst problem with watermen is they're hunter-gatherers. Some of them have business models, but they're hunter-gatherers. They enjoy what they do. So they want to catch as much as they can. So you have to give them limits economically, and for far as for the natural resource, not to destroy it. And I think it's a good thing, as long as it's never keep taking away, and someone is not looking at it, and don't take away and never adjust back. You know what I mean? Take away and adjust back. It seemed like when they regulate, it constantly shrinks the fishery and never gives anything back. You know what I mean? Which some things it hurt the industry on the economic side, because we have other states around us that aren't doing the same thing. So you're competing on a domestic level with less product, where somebody else has got a no limit fishery, and the guys are like, why can't I get any money from my crabs or my oysters? Because we're only catching this many. You know what I mean? Somebody in one state away is catching 4,000 pounds. You're only allowed to catch 2,000 pounds.
I think you're making an important point, right? Nature, like you said, does not borders.
Nope.
I mean, unless this is regulated on a regional basis.
That's right.
I mean, the guy upstream or the guy downstream is going to be affected by
Yep.
what's happening. So kind of discuss that a little bit more. I mean, it's like, is you part of any form of co-op, or I mean, is there any form of kind of partnerships between kind of these statewide fisheries, or I mean, how does that?
That I can't answer. I know they all communicate, especially with Maryland and Virginia, but they're not. Maryland and Virginia, because we're in the same watershed, are talking quite a bit. If we regulate, they want to regulate. If they regulate, we want to regulate, because what we have goes to them, and what they have comes to us. So yes, we want to, but I don't think they coincide so much with North Carolina, Delaware, different watershed, different body of water, so they feel like that it's not going to impact Chesapeake Bay's water quality. So no, I don't think Virginia talks to Louisiana. I don't think Virginia, and believe me, if it's caught in Louisiana, it's here the next day, and it affects our market. And these guys could be catching 2 bushel of Big Jimmys and getting $200 a bushel and be happy. Louisiana can have crabs and be not overfished, but have no limit fishing, And the only thing that steers them is economics. If the crabs go down, then it steers them. Like if you put females down and the males are up, they'll move towards the males. If the males aren't selling, females are a little stronger, and you give them a little bit more emphasis on that money-wise, they move towards that. It's the only way I've seen to move them from one product to another, and it speaks volumes. And like I'll send out, we have a 20-person text, and we have like 4 texts for the state of Virginia. And most all those people were buying and transition with on a daily basis as crabbers. And then we have oystermen that we text as well. And when you send that text out, whether the group of us are all crabbing for Crab Express, say this right here represents everybody's crabbing for Crab Express, but only 3 of y'all are still crabbing. These guys are waiting on the sideline for whatever reason. They don't want to go. They just took off. They just quit. They still see that text. So when we send it out, it goes to 20 people at one time, then 20 people, then 20 people, and it spreads the news fast. Facebook does too, but nobody knows whether to believe Facebook. You know what I mean? That's just like, are they saying Sylvester Stallone died? You know what I mean? Did he really die? No, he didn't. But they had pictures. You would have believed it. When you send that out, they take that as because, you're good to your word. So if you're saying this is what's going on, they kind of steer by what we're telling them. There is no podcast or something that they can tune into that has like the East Coast forecast for the crabs, because it's so volatile. Okay, give you for instance, last Friday, a week ago Friday, they were calling from Louisiana saying help, SOS, 911. That's what they text. We got so many we can't sell them. Called them up. I said, listen, we've got about what we need to move. Do you really need help? Yeah, we need help. All right, we'll send it on an open ticket. So they're going to just send it. You know what I mean? Do what you can for me. Monday was the same way. Since Monday, it's been all downhill. It's like today we didn't run. We didn't pick anything up off the freight trucks, and tomorrow we probably won't. You could have, but it really wasn't worth it. Business model to pair it up with Virginia's, and they didn't need any more help, so we just back off. So it's that volatile, and the reasoning in that wasn't that their crabs dried up in 4 days. Price went down. Guys got the wind taking out their sails. Like, so you walk into work tomorrow morning and they tell you just got a $10,000 a year pay cut, and you're going to want to turn around and walk right back out the door and go home. That takes the wind right out your sails. And then the wind came around. They always, down there, knowing their fishery and dealing with them for 20 years, they always get more crabs when the wind's blowing the water in. Mm-hmm. It's unlike our fishery here, where the wind, the tide doesn't affect the crab. I mean, you get effects on the crabs, low pressures, high pressures, fish bite, crabs bite better. But down there, they got to have some water in when they're closer in. They're off, and so that affected them a lot. The wind come around the other way, the water left them. The guys got disgusted. Everything went. So it goes like this. It's a juggling act. It's Uno every day. Uno. You want to be out. You want to have no cards. You want to play Uno every day. So everybody's playing Uno. Sometimes you only have a 3 or 4 hour window to when you know what you're going to get. With us, with limits here in Virginia, it does help us as buyers because you know what's going to hit the dock on an upside. So if you got 10 boats, they're all limited 27 bushel per boat. Your max number is 270. So you know that if you don't have to sell beyond 270. Down there, they have no limits. Them guys could get whatever the boat could bring. So that's tough for them. We used to be that way, and when I first started buying, and it was tough. We had limits in the spring, then no limits in the summer and the fall, and it was tough. And so that did help. The regulating did help. It gave you a benchmark to go by when you were selling.
Well, we're talking about oysters. Would you mind kind of showing us what you're doing today and kind of show us around the yard?
Okay. Well, I guess we can start down here. We have what the idea with even state of Virginia, VIMS, watermen's been practiced for, I guess, hundreds of years. You put the shell back overboard. This is all for private ground. We're not planning anything on the state. State takes care of the state. We take care of our private leases. The state will lease you a piece of bottom for so much per acre per year. They give you parameters. There's actually an app that you go on. and VMRC maps, and you can see your blue dot where you're at, and you can see your borders, like your property, and you know, and you got to mark it up, and you put your labels on the corners, and you're like, this is my piece of property, and you can only be on it legally by law if you have a permit, you know. So there's a lot of legality to it. What we'll do is we'll either bring seed oysters from James River, which are baby oysters, smaller oysters, maybe 1 to 3 inches in length, and we buy them for a lesser amount, and you can buy them from October to May, but we usually try to wait until the spring to do it, mainly because it's a slower moment. You're trying to make money, that's all spending money. So usually we take last couple weeks of April and all of May to be like a spring plant, and then go back to harvesting and let it alone, let it grow, and then we do like a crop rotation. We'll do a place, and then we'll let it lay, we'll check on it, see how they're doing. When they get big enough, then we'll turn the guys loose, let them harvest it. When we're constantly experimenting. So, like right here, we take shells out every single morning in the small boat. Okay, so we'll take them out 10, 20 totes at a time. Put back wherever we're working at. We'll expand the rock. You're always trying to expand where you're working at. You know, make a larger area, and you can't. The topography of the bottom, and whether you're like got pure mud or pure sand, you want to be where it's like sandy mud. You don't want to be on mud because there's no substrate to hold it up, so it'll sink down, and you don't want to be on sand because it'll shift. So we'll plant the shells on the proper bottom, expanding the rock if you're able to, and then they'll get strike on them. I had some here to show you, but these are all house shells. They're all dried out, year old or more. And the oyster, when it gets in the water, it'll be perfectly clean. The oyster, like barnacles on the side of that boat, will attach to the shell and then naturally grow. That's one way to do it. And then bring in the seed, which is oysters that have already started growing in another area, and you're just transplanting them to where you want them to be at, or into an area where it's very low strike. The strike is kind of like the strike in the water, if you would imagine it, is kind of like a ribbon, and like the seed works like a ribbon in the water. So the top, like if you get more strike offshore, inshore, it has a lot to do with when they were spawning whenever their greatest spawn was. Did you have the most prevailing winds, or did you have the most tide? And did it kind of, work it more inshore, or did it but it's never too far off. It's just like maybe, just a little further inshore, a little bit further offshore. So you plan them with an educated guess or a good hope that you're putting them in the right spot. But it seems like the further up the tributaries in a lower salinity, you don't get quite you don't get as much strike per shell as you do in a little bit higher salinity. Not super salinity, but in a little lower salinity. So we'll put those down, and we'll do some seed, and we don't just do it with like this. We'll put them on these barges and have a piece of machinery or water that blasts them off, and then we have another boat that is a flat 50-foot steel boat that'll hold about half that pile at a time. That pile is probably about 7,000 is left there. So I'd say half the pile will hold about a third of the pile at a time, and we'll blow them. And then sometimes we'll do some transplant of stuff that's out there. Like if it's in areas where it doesn't look like it's doing much, but you got the material on the bottom, and you think, or it's a higher strike, and you're using the drag to catch it, not the tongs. You'll dredge it by and transplant it. So from over here to over there, just trying to organize things so you think it grows the best.
When oysters spawn, they release this kind of eggs in the water. What is the term for that? I'm trying to remember.
What tells them to do that?
No, what is it? So when they spawn, it's full of like almost little bubbles, right? Of like white.
Oh, you're over my pay grade now. I can't tell you. I just know they do it. I can't. It'd be like me. I can tell you women have babies, but I can't tell you, exactly all the science behind it. But
there's a specific term I'm trying to.
Yeah. Well, I know that the water temperature triggers them to in different areas to spawn. It seems like because as they spawn and you catch them and you open them up, you can tell if they've spawned longer than another oyster in another area, because they won't have as much consistency to them. They'll get we call it clearer and clearer. Like when you open them, their body will be there, but they won't have any. They'll almost be like a blister when they're completely milked out. There'll be an oyster, the heart be there, the organs be there, but they won't be as white and full like they are. Like people say, are they fat? When they say are they fat, they mean do they have their whole body is there, and their whole body is actually a body that's ready to spawn. So as they spawn, they get a little leaner and a little leaner and a little leaner. So you can tell the ones in shallower water where it warms up faster lean out a little quicker than stuff that's off in the deeper water, which seems like it stays fat longer. So you would only presume that the stuff in the creeks and around the shore would maybe spawn a little sooner than stuff off by the channel or in deeper water where the water temp is slower to rise. But water temperature does trigger them on spawning, it seems like. Did that answer that question?
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Rick? I had been hearing from crabbers from different areas that they were having trouble keeping their pots clean, but they're from a different area.
Yes, that's actually part of the water quality getting better. The water is getting clearer. So just like if you're growing a garden, it takes sunshine. So the further the sun can get down, the more it's going to grow, and it's going to attach to something. So the clarity of the water. So we sit in the spring. Say, in a normal spring, we'll sit in anywhere from say 10 to 30 feet or 40 feet, depending on where you're at. Eastern shore, set a little deeper sometimes than you do on this shore, on the western shore. But when you go in the rivers and when you come more inland, you tend to set 4, 5, 7, 8 foot of water, and the sun, as you get more and more daylight, it penetrating further to the bottom, and the water's clear and it's in good shape. Stuff's growing. So oysters are growing, barnacles are growing, crabs are growing, grass is growing too, and it is harder to keep it clean. It actually is a natural regulator, because when the pots get dirty, and you can see these pots are from last year. If you don't want to walk down here, be careful. These pots are from last year, and you can see we haven't taken the growth off of them. We just stacked them. We went from one industry to the next in like one day. So this is just part of the gear, and you can see how when it grows like just in certain spots. See how it's here, and how it's here, and here. It's like it's in the bottom portion of the pot. You know why that is? Because when they get caught, they go in and they eat, and the first instinct is to go up. So they go up here through this upper story, which they get trapped even further. So when they're up here, they got their little legs. You see them when they come up. They got their little legs stuck out. So they're walking around all up here. They're cleaning it, and they're eating it. They're eating it, and they're cleaning it. They're down here, they're just here for a moment. They just walk in, eat, and you notice how it's cleaner here than it is there. Look at that. That's where they're eating. They're sitting right here, and they're get a little something, and then they're going up there. Y'all want to see some crabs? We actually have some right here. We have some right here.
Wow, what's that?
Well, this is just a whole pot. We had a couple of pots out for testing, and we collected them in there. See, so you have the sponge crabs. Let's get a couple of them out. You have the sponge crab. You got a female that has not, there's no way to know if they're going to sponge or not, But that's a sponge, and there's different in market. Like we're paying $40 a bushel for these, $20 a bushel for these, because and they're the same. If you eat it, if you took them home and you pop this off and you steamed her up, same deal. But it's just in people's mind, they don't want to eat somebody that's pregnant. They're like, throw her back. Okay, and then you got there's not really any big males in here. Let's see here. There's not really any males in there to show you. There's some 5-inch males in here. I don't really see any males. Just a couple big females. And you know when you just for note to self, don't ever pick a crab up with your finger right there because they can reach back that far.
To where?
Don't pick them up like that because they will reach back like that.
Ooh.
You always pick them up. Your safest spot to hold them, I will say, is right there. So like if they were on the dock, or throwing by his feet, he's got flip flops on, you would just step on them like that, and then just reach right there and get them on that fin, and they can't get you. They can't get you right there. No kind of way can they get you. And when picking them up, you want to be assertive. You don't want to you just want to do it. You know what I mean? Because they'll anticipate your moves. They got pretty good eyesight. All right, let's put these back in the water.
Can you talk about some of the bigger booms or busts?
Economically or just catch?
Just catch.
Okay, so booms, different years. I can remember 1996 we were crabbing. It was just a lot of crabs, and it's just a series of events. That summer, if crabs were doing well, or a lot of times if you have a storm, we've seen storms come through, like Isabel, Floyd. I can name different storms that that the crabs get concentrated in the upper tributaries, and then all of a sudden you have a large amount of fresh water dumped on Virginia, mainly inland, not down the bay, and Richmond gets flooded, or Franklin's flooded, using Franklin as James River, Richmond as well, James River, Fredericksburg for Rappahannock, and all of a sudden within 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days, you see this massive wave of crabs coming out the river, and they're all running from the salinity that's tailing them, and they keep moving downstream until they feel like they're safe. So you'll get really big catches during that time. You'll get big catches in the spring when they first come out. If you tell people, they don't really believe you how many you can catch when they're really wanting to trap. With those traps, if you catch 10 to the bushel, 10 pots will fill one basket up, then in your mind you could say, okay, that's good. That's a good average. 5 is doing really good. More than 5 is rare to see. It happens, but it's not something that you see more than a couple times a year, or in a short place, or where you got all the planets aligned and you were in the right place at the right time, and then the next day they didn't catch like that anymore. They were back down to 10 pots to a bushel. But we've seen a lot of highs and lows, but if you catch a lot of crabs, that it's gonna devastate the market most of the time. So it's always nice to bring in a boatload when we were allowed to, but in the same turn, economically, where you're gonna catch 10 baskets of crabs for $100 a bushel and get $1,000 paycheck, or you're gonna catch 100 bushels for $10 a bushel and have to pull on 4,000 pounds of crabs and get $1,000 paycheck, and have to have probably 3 men on the boat. But hey, when were you happier? You were happier when you brought the 100 in. You still got the 1,000 for a few days till you got tired of pulling on them. So, it's all still about economics, but highs and lows. There's been a lot of them. I've seen a lot of people that were the same age as me, in my same age group, went high school with me in this area. When we had, it was so volatile that a lot of times they couldn't take it. They were like, just going to go work for this place, or even one of you said some of y'all work for VIMS, or with William and Mary, which is associated with VIMS. One of the best crabbers that was here in the state of Virginia, one of them, is my cousin, and he now is the head captain at VIMS that does the winter dredge survey. So he has a bit of understanding, but he still can't bend. Can't bend the rules, So it's been a lot of highs and lows. It is fun. Oyster catch. We've seen 100 bushels in 3 hours, 50 bushels in an hour, 70 bushels in an hour, and then we worked today. We started at 7 o'clock. We caught 30 bushels by 9:30, and I was satisfied. That's good. Catch 30 bushels of oysters. Take the day. Don't be greedy. Come on in. Sell that. Tomorrow's another day. you can only catch them once. You got to give them time to grow. So we've learned with the private ground to regulate our own self. But there has been a lot of highs and lows. But everybody always likes the highs. The lows always suck. They do. Yeah, you really do. They suck. And you get spoiled, and it really, it really does. It's disheartening. It take you a couple days to get your head straight again once that wave passes by or the money or whatever, and then you just go back, put your head down, and you go to work, and you just do it. You just do it. You love it, and then you hate it. You love it, then you hate it. But you're going to do it. Do you think about quitting? Sure you do. Do you get cold? Sure you do. Do you get tired of standing up? Yeah, sure you do. Do I get aggravated trying to sell crab? No, don't know price, whatever. Sure you do. But that's what you do. That's what you're going to do. That's your job. You're going to be there. You're going to, you just go or blow. Just go or blow. That's all you know how to do.
Does anyone else want to take a turn or anything? Is this the boat you were working on over here?
No. This boat, when this marina was viable, this boat came here to get pulled up on this rail right here. We're rebuilding this rail system, which is a cradle that comes down, and the boats will get on the cradle, and then a chain pulls them up this rail versus getting them pulled up with that lift over there. And the larger boats, well, he was here, this has been 10 years ago. He was taking on water, and the rail wasn't working, or for whatever reason, and the boat caught fire and sank. This is before I bought the place. So they had already released the boat, like it wasn't a hazard to the environment, and we have been slowly, it caught fire, so obviously it's not operable, and I don't think it's floatable. So we have slowly been hauling the trash off the boat, and the plan is this year to bring a barge and an excavator in here, and we're going to pull it out of the water. Because we've only been right here for about maybe 3-4 years. The people that own this it was split. It used to be all Jordan Marine, and then that side was split with this side, and the lady that still owned this side, she sold it to me and my wife. Place to land, place to put your gear. The guys normally, if they're working like at a state dock, or there's less and less places that touch the water that'll tolerate bringing traps down.
Yeah.
So like I would be able to do this down at the state landing, leave these till tomorrow morning, but you can prepare work from the day before. You can be as messy as you want or as neat as you want. Nobody can tell you you're in the way, move your boat out of the way, I need to get there, whatever. So me having 3 sons, and then so much family, and it was just an investment. I figured if they didn't want to do it, you were just going to make money off the property, and you could sell the property, or you could build a house here because there's more land that goes that way. You could do whatever. So it was mainly to be able to touch water. Having the conveyor near water that you don't have to wait for the tide to rise and fall is, the last place that we were planting, we had to wait for the tide to get up to get close enough to the shore to be able to load the shells, because it's going to draw you down. You're going to go from drawing like 2 feet to drawing 5 feet once you're loaded. So it does help a lot to have enough water that you can get up close to the shore, get loaded. You don't have to work with the tide and say, okay, we can't go to work tomorrow at 5 in the morning. We have to wait until 10 o'clock when it's boiling hot before we can load, because we got to wait for the tide to come in. So you can just get on a routine. Get down here at 4 or 5 in the morning, do your thing, get off, spend the rest of your day working.
Are your sons going to continue to visit?
My son, Trevor Bonniville, owns 3 boats, and one of them is inside the building getting them, and the other 2 are not here. He has one down James River, and he's producing for the company. His wife is working for us, and she's had a child and with another child. And Weston is the youngest one, the young man that you seen a minute ago. And I have another son, Tanner. Tanner seems like the typical he wants to Fortnite guy. He's with the headphones. Weston likes the computer, likes Fortnite, but he also likes being outside. He wants to go for walks in the woods. He likes riding a 4-wheeler. He likes going on the boat. So, 2 different kids. It's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say about Trevor. I let them do whatever they want to do. My mom told me, Do whatever you want to do. Just whatever you do is do it with all your heart. Whatever you put your hand to, do the best you can do. But
in the next couple of years, what are your goals? Where do you foresee this going next 5 years? What are your goals? Do you have? Do you want to keep expanding or?
not really.
No?
Just maintain what we have and see where my son and my daughter-in-law go. You know, I mean, I'm not retirable. I'm 48, be 49 in October, but we've done a lot in a short period of time. So you're kind of wanting to turn the baton over to somebody else. So if they feel, you know, if they feel like they want to take it on, then yeah, it's easily to, because I've already had several hundred employees and 10 tractor trailers and was big. And then we had the first recession and diesel fuel went to $4 or something a gallon, and I was paying $100,000 a month in fuel cost and insurance and etc. So we scaled it back so it was manageable, and we were doing less work for the same money. It seemed like, or close. So we've just slowly expanded to what's profitable, but you got to look at what they're regulating, what they're allowing the guys to catch, how other places are getting regulated compared to Virginia. So it's hard, it's hard to say. We did add-ons, like the oysters were add-on. After the oil spill down in Louisiana, we were running the 10 track trailers down there. That took a lot of our business mile away, so we turned to oysters. And it was the right moment because they were coming back, and Lord worked that out. We stuck with the crabs. We've turned to some other stuff, some other products to sell, and pushed the retail a little bit more. But my goal in the next, would you say 5 years?
5-10 years.
Man, buy a beach house and relax as much as I can. You want to know the God's honest truth? Spend as much time with my family as I can, enjoy myself as much as I can, because no day is promised and you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. So just do the best that you can and just live right. Live clean, live right, live for the Lord.
And kind of what words can I say to the future generation, right? I mean, your crab fishermen are kind of a dying breed. I mean, you obviously love what you do. I mean, and that it would seem like a huge sin if that passion will kind of die off with your generation. What's everybody thinking about it? What do you have to say?
Well, you can look at that in two ways. I thought about that myself many times. I think the watermen that are around here are realizing that not too many young people, you're not going to have this wave of young people that are going to want to work on the water per se more than what you have right now. The oyster industry, it was really dying. Really, no young people were dropping off. Like I was saying, the people my same age were getting jobs, at Amoco dock or shipyard or, whatever, traveling afar, or got into some other industry, used their degrees or whatever, and got away from the water. They were like, it's not going to work out, I don't have benefits, blah, blah. But when the oyster industry picked back up, it was viable enough that it pulled the next generation of guys that came along. I graduated in '92, so the guys that say graduated in 2000, when 2002, when those people came on board and were youngsters, they stuck with the industry. So we have a few more young people that are in the industry because of oysters, and then they picked up some other trades when oysters aren't, but it's really kept. But I think some of the crabbers and the crabs, not so much the oysters, is the thing that is the most volatile. I think people realize that crabbers are a dying breed, not the crabs, the crabbers. People are not wanting to do it. So you don't have to worry about them all getting caught up, because it's not going to happen, because the economics is not going to let it happen. People aren't going to go out there for their health and catch a boatload of crabs, come in and give them away. They can't do it. They've got to, and they're getting older, and they don't feel like it, and they've already made money, or whatever their situation is, or they don't have money and they can't afford to do it. I think that people see that it's dying, so some of the strongest ones are hoping that they will hold on and it'll be less in the industry, and that will per se kind of straighten itself out, because you'll have less supply, same demand, hopefully more, but the same. There was less crabs in the 2000s. Crabs got more marketed in the city. people could afford to do it. You were giving them, instead of putting them in barrels like this red barrel right here full of crabs, which, you know, crab barrels we call them, but they're just 29-gallon Rubbermaid trash cans, and taking them to a picking house. You're putting them in wood baskets and marketing them in the city, which they were getting more profit. That kind of put the processors, it suppressed the processors. So the older ones got out, and I think a lot of the larger ones held on, thinking that once the smaller guy got out, then there will be more crabs available for them and more meat market. So I think this, but now it's shrinking again. H-2B visa problems, price of everything just went up again here during the COVID. So it's putting a different, it's just different. It's different all over again. It keeps changing. So to predict something, it's kind of in a changing state. It's metamorphosing. It did not metamorphose for a while, but now it's still metamorphosing. And regulation has a lot to do with it, but economics is your biggest thing.
Oh, I was just sticking it out
Yes,
so
yes,
we
sure,
can hear
sure.
you.
Yeah.
I don't know that we have further questions, right? And I just wanted to see if you could kind of show us, you know,
Yeah,
anything
sure.
that you want to show us. and
Well,
then
I mean,
we'll-
it depends on how much you want to see. Do y'all want to see the boats? Are y'all up for that? We got to walk through the building if you don't want to see that.
that sounds good to me. If
You wanna
folks
see-
want to see the boats, and I know.
I got to scoot.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad you got to meet Katie, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I'll be back.
Okay, that's fine. And who do you work for?
Virginia Humanities.
Okay.
So Virginia Folk Life Program.
Okay.
But I'm thinking about how we can launch a documentary initiative that does work with specific Virginia professions. So it's helpful for me to get out here.
I think not to take anything away from that, but it's so hard to tell someone or to make a documentary about something that you almost have to feel, taste, or smell. You almost have to hear them seagulls. You smell that salt water, or you smell that mud. I mean, it's all, you know what I'm saying? It's just all part of it. You know what I mean? The busted up dock, the grassy crab pots, whatever. It's just all part of the whole thing. And people see it, but I don't think they can really feel it. What you're trying to convey to them, because you're here, you're
Right.
talking to me, you're seeing it. It's hard to put it on film. It really is. It's like an experience. You know what I mean? It really is. We've had some people 4 or 5 years ago were trying to get the homeowners, and I guess the newer people to the area, homeowners and the guys that were working on the water, seeing eye to eye. So they weren't looking at us as an eyesore, or they were trying to show people who we really were, which was good. But I don't think they really could see what we were. They saw us as somebody that was messing up their view. Some people did. Some people enjoyed looking. It's all in the person. But as I watched that video, they spent a lot of time filming, not just me, but a lot of other people. It was a great clip. You know, it was like maybe 20 minutes long, 15, 20 minutes long. It was great. It showed a lot, but I understood it. I don't know how someone would understand it that was from Wichita, Kansas, or that was, you know, or a child in school. That, you know what I'm saying? How are they perceiving what you're showing them? Are they really getting what you're saying?
Well, you gave us a glimpse today, and even in the words you use, like all the specific vocabulary points to layers and layers of deeper knowledge. So you can give people a taste and an invitation to learn more.
But I feel like that I never talk about any of that unless somebody asks, because you're like boring them, or you're like feel like you're being a know-it-all. Like, I only tell my kids that stuff, and then they're like, oh yeah, all right. You know, because they're like, okay, I'll use that another. You tell me that, you know, just in case. I tell them as things pop up. But my dad did the same thing. I never really grabbed hold of it. I used to sleep a lot on the boat, and because I stayed up late, or I was off with my wife or whoever, and I would sleep. My dad would say, "Boy, you better wake up. You better look around. Pay attention. You ain't gonna know what to do. You better look around. If you're gonna do this, you better get, you know, with some 4-letter words in there." And yeah, I wasn't. My only thing I learned how to do on the boat when I was young was smoke cigarettes and cuss and be bad. You know, my mom was praying for me when we got home, and you were trying to, you know, hide what you weren't supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? But getting the people to feel would be great. It really would. For people to know, because I think a lot of people are interested, but from afar. They're like interested from afar because they don't want to pry or get in your business. So, I mean, I don't mind talking to people, but it was Friday. You hit me at just the right moment. It was Friday. I was trying to wind down, and tomorrow is kind of like we call it a gear day, but we're like vacuum the back bilges of the boat out. We're gonna work on this conveyor over here to get it working for planting seed, and we're gonna work till about lunch, and then I'm gonna live like a normal person. You know what I mean? Go home, spend time with the kids, and play with the dog. Hopefully they're handling Crab Express for me. I try to stay away from Crab Express as much as I can to let them feel like I'm not micromanaging them. You know what I mean? Try not to micromanage, but at times you can't help. But because it's yours, you know what I mean? Like I don't want it done this way. But yeah, I think that's great that you would do that. Y'all are interested, and you're from
Florida, University of Florida.
where at?
University of
Oh,
Florida.
University of Florida.
Yes, sir.
That's at what part of Florida?
Gainesville, northern central.
Yes.
North central.
We deliver a lot of product. I want you to put that on video. But we deliver a lot of product down in Florida. Do a lot of business in Florida. From Jacksonville all the way down through all the way down to Daytona, say, instead of naming places all the way down, and then over to Tampa and back up through Orlando and a little place outside of Orlando. Different mom and pop vendors. No grocery stores or anything, just all carry-outs and restaurants. Like they're gonna have Jeep Week in Daytona next week. They had cheerleaders there last week. They had several weeks ago Bike Week. They had Beach Week. You know, kids were off of college. It's just always booming down there. It's business down there, so it drew us that way.
Can we walk a little bit
Sure.
that way before
Yes.
we lose the light?
Yep. Yeah, what got us down there was crabs, and then the crab industry, and being in the oyster industry, and not just down there, Charleston, you know, out in the western part of South Carolina, Midwest. We deliver out in Chicago, or send a freight truck to Detroit, Indianapolis, Canada, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore. St. Pete's Beach, a couple customers come meet us. But you know, like around what is it? The two islands that are over there.
Treasure Island,
No, above that.
Sarasota, Clearwater Beach,
Just
A1 Key.
my wife does the sales down there. When we vacation down there, I know the places, but you got to hold a route. You can't bounce the whole state, so you hold a route and you know keep it manageable. You'll find yourself like we were before, running 10 trucks, and then you got to put stuff on a truck to make a wheel turn, and that's a bad business model. So you want to keep it so you're full going and bring something back, and you make money and be settled with that.
You mentioned New York. You doing business in Queens?
In Queens,
Yeah.
Brooklyn, over on the other side, near LaGuardia, over in College Point. That we have a warehouse over there working with a guy. Go across the Whitestone Bridge.
I just wanted to say bye. I didn't want it on the recorder.
Yeah. Oh, you have family up there? We've been doing business in New York since about '98, and it was mainly crabs. They're big. You know, there's a lot of population there. All right, good meeting you. Your name was again?
Jeremy, I'm Katie.
Katie. Okay. I'm terrible with names.
That's
So I
okay.
can't remember it next time I see you. Don't hold it against me.
All right, I'll see you
Nice to
tomorrow.
meet you.
Nice to meet you, Katie.
Great. What time are you fishing then?
Yes, sir.
The fish markets in Queens.
Yes, sir.
What time are you trying to count?
We have another gentleman that we've had several people that we worked with to try to network. You can send it to the market up there, but the market's only open Monday morning through Friday morning, and sometimes they take holidays off.
Yeah.
So then that leaves you big gaps, and the crabbers work more than the market's open. So you had to, you had to create more infrastructure up there. So we partnered with people, hired people. We've done it a lot over the last, say, 20, 25 years, and we got a gentleman up there that that moves product for us. You know what I mean? We'll send it up to the warehouse. He works it out through Flushing, Brooklyn, Jersey City, over Long Island. Oysters, we send stuff back and forth. And then on the weekends, if we send it on a freight truck all week long, then on the weekends we'll use some of the trucks that we have and drivers to take it up there if it's necessary.
Can we go see the boat?
Yeah, okay, let's go see them. All right.
Thank you so much
Yes,
for showing us
no
everything.
problem. My
This
throat's
is
getting
really
dry now from
awesome.
talking so much.
Yeah. And your father was so wonderful.
Yeah, he's a character, I can tell you. I couldn't even imagine what he told y'all. These are the barrels that we used to use to put crabs in. That's actually one of them, because we had them painted black. We used to put crabs in those to go to the processor. All right, we got a maze through here. And this building is built worthless. This was the actual where they built Chesapeake Bay did rise. All right, well, don't mind steps like a woman would say when you're coming to the house, but mind the steps. All right, this is our boat that we're building. Just because, no particular reason, just because we want to build another boat, and we're going to put somebody else in it. It was actually a hodgepodge of stuff that we had left over. We had the hull, and we had a lot of new items and stuff that were left over from working on another boat, so we just put another boat together. And y'all come around this way. It's like 2/3 done. I did all the work, all the metal work, everything. Y'all, if you want to go, if y'all want to come up there and take a look up the ladder, you can look inside the boat, see the interior of it. It's built different than the traditional fiberglass boats here, but I thought it would work better.
How is it different?
Because the house is in the stern. Now we have boats in Virginia with the house in the stern, but they're usually deck boats. And there is a few smaller work boats that have them in the stern, and I like that idea. But I've seen that they weren't usually this big. I like it because when you're in the house, if you're oystering, I can watch. I don't have to look back to see what they're doing. I'm looking forward all the time. I mean, of course, you're gonna look back every now and then, but you can watch the crew and you know what I mean? It makes it so you don't have to take your eyes. You're not doing this, and all your loads in front of you. So you have a clear view of everything you're doing. I mean, we might start working, I might hate it, but I thought it was a good idea, and you know, it was something that we've done in about 2 years. Now this boat right here was built here in Gloucester County by Lodi Davis, and was built for a man on Tangier, and the name of it was the Carolyn C. And then it was he passed. He used it for pound netting and just different fisheries, hauling crabs, hauling bait across the bay from Reedsville to Tangier, and then it was sold to someone in Deltaville, and then Willett Norris was a boat builder. He redid the top work. He bought it, got hold of it. It was named the Miss Martha. Somebody else got it, named it the Newport Comfort. And then, not to go into great detail, then it came to us. It was for sale, and kind of rescued it because nobody really wanted it. This has been about 10 years ago, 8 or 10 years ago. So we named it the Guinea Girl, being that it's named after my wife, because the Tangierman would always say, yeah, that Guinea Girl, you know, because my wife would ride on the truck to buy crabs, and they would say, yeah, that Guinea Girl, you know, over Cape Charles, or they would call her that Guinea Girl. So she didn't want her name on it like Miss Jenny or anything like that. So we named it the Guinea Girl.
Who was the
And it's
Tangierman?
You know Tangier Island? Mm-hmm. Well, we call them like Virginians or Americans. We call them. So just various Tangiermen would say, you know, would call her that, or you'd hear the term and it kind of stuck, you know.
Who was the original boat owner?
I can't. Well, all I know is his nickname. His name was Pugh. We called him Pugh, and I don't know his real name. I mean, I'll think of it, but like I told you, I'm terrible with names. But I can remember Pugh. Real good guy. Didn't know him personally. My uncle Maynard Jr., my dad's brother, was very good friends with him. So the boat was built in 1968, and the gentleman that built this boat and my uncle that's deceased, my oldest uncle, that was the same age as him. He would be in his maybe 90s, 100 now if he was alive. My uncle. He put a stern rig. When they dredge crabs, if you look back at history, you see that they were drudging on these big boats with the house in the back, and they were kind of like the schooners are doing now in Maryland. They're pulling drudges off each side. They pull one up, they pull another one up. Okay, well, the guys with the smaller boats were like, man, we're getting pinched out of this picture. We've got a little boat, I mean, a good-sized boat, but a little boat compared to a 100-foot deck boat or a 50-foot deck boat. But we want to do that fishery too. So my uncle, Maynard Bonniville, my dad's oldest brother, was like, he had a boat, the name was a Sylvia, and he wanted a boat that would, and he was a big drudger, and my dad was too, that would pull over this, somehow utilize this boat. So I guess he brainstorms. We never had a conversation about it. He brainstorms and figures out how to put the drudges on the stern of the boat, and instead of pulling them separately on each side, he pulls them together, connects them, puts a bar in the front, connects them in the back, so they can't get apart, but they can't go together, and then put a bridle chain on it and pulled it on one chain and put the heister in the front of the boat. So when he did that, he changed the industry. He changed the whole industry, because it went from everybody using one type to dredge to he totally changed the industry, because everybody had a smaller boat and everybody was like, hey, I can be part of this fishery now. I can crab in the summertime in this boat. I can go fishing, and now I can go dredging crabs. So it opened up, and there was no restrictions. There was no moratoriums in. Anybody could go dredge crabs. So it changed the whole industry. He put that rig on his boat and used it, and he was friends with the man that built this boat, and he said, hey, can you show me what you did? So this boat sailed from Tangier to Gloucester County, and my uncle put the rig on this boat. This was the second boat in Chesapeake Bay that had a stern dredge rig on it. So this was a Tangier trendsetter. When it went back to Tangier and it took what we invented, what we changed, took the same thing and just and metamorphosed it into something different. He took it back there, and the idea just spread. Went to the Eastern Shore, went to Cape Charles, and went everywhere, just like that. Because there was no Facebook then. So you weren't taking pictures, people weren't seeing it. It would have took years for someone to ride over here. So they seen how, and they, it started that smaller boat dredge industry, and then you started to see the larger deck boats fade away. And everything went to a little bit bigger wood boat, but all stern rigs. And the larger boat didn't have it was more upkeep and seemed almost like too big, because this size boat was able to do it. It was less upkeep. It was more versatile. You could use it for a lot of different things. You could use one boat to do a lot of things, which was a better business model than using a boat that could only do one fishery, or maybe haul oysters and dredge crabs, or haul watermelons. They did all sorts of stuff a long time ago. They used them for cargo, transporting things back 100 years ago. So that's a little bit of history with this boat. The reason it's in here, the house was bad, and that was the house that Mr. Norris had put on there. It had rotted, so it had had some bad places in it. So a friend of mine that does a lot of boat work, Wes Robbins, agreed that he would come in here, and he's like a master woodworker, and that he runs his own business, and it's not boat work. He would work on the boat as he had time, and he's a friend of the family, so he's done a great job. I wish it'd be too much to get y'all all up in there, but the inside of the cabin is gorgeous. Tiffany Yachts couldn't have done a better job than what he did on the boat. It's slow, but my son has two other boats, so it's not like we need the boat, but we will be glad when we get it back. So slow, but right, doing it right. And when I sold the boat to my son, when I was the one that bought the boat, and it was kind of, really didn't need the boat, but we kind of rescued it. My wife was like, why are you buying another boat? But the history behind the boat, and I just wanted another boat for whatever reason. Then my Uncle Jackie come along. He had just got rid of his boat because he had a stroke. Then he was feeling a little better, so he worked it for a few years. Then my oldest son got old enough, and he said, hey, Dad, can I work that boat? So he started working it, and then he asked me, we were going somewhere, and he's like, can I buy that boat from you? And I wanted to give it to him, but he was like, no, I don't want you to give me anything. I want to buy it from you. So he did. He bought it. And I said, well, if you want to buy it, I'll sell it to you for $1. He's like, nah, I want to buy it. So the deal we made was I sold it to him. He paid me, but he can't sell it to anyone else. If it goes anywhere, it's got to come back to me. But I bet when I buy it, I'm going to have to buy it back for more than what he gave me, or else I'm going to never hear the end of it. You know what I mean? Or he's going to end up with it anyway. Him or Trevor or my oldest son, this is Weston. One of them will end up with it sooner or later. But it's the only wood boat that we really have, and it's glassed over. It's got fiberglass on the bottom. It was glassed previous to, previous life, to give it a little bit more longevity, but to make it safer, or maybe you keep just to prolong the life of the boat. So we kept it like they had it instead of pulling it back down to just bare wood. And it's a good boat. The boat and the captain have to meld together, because you got to know what the boat is. You got to feel what you're in when you're doing your work, especially oystering, crabbing. The boat can make a difference, not far as catching with the pots, but just how good it is, how fast it is, how shallow water can go in, how much room you have. But with oystering, the boat really makes a difference. You have to adapt to the boat. Any boat can catch oysters. Any person can catch oysters. You just have to pay attention to what you're doing and adapt to your environment and the boat. This boat is heavy and it's slow, and that's good. That's good because it's steady. When it's making the drag, it's not, you can imagine when you're dragging something, it's going to want to stop and go to a certain degree. Well, you got a certain amount of inertia. It's harder to stop. Made it a good dredge boat. Dredging, because you're pulling 16 foot of steel across the bottom. So if you have a light boat, even if it has a lot of power, when you set out, it'll stop the boat. Or you'll set out at 6 miles an hour, and when you hit the bottom, you'll see drop right back to you'll be going 4 knots. And if you're in a light boat, like my boat, I did it in my boat down there, and I had to set out 1,200 RPMs. When it hit the bottom, I went from 6 knots to 2 knots. I felt them when it hit the bottom, and then you had to come on the throttle to make sure they kept going. Where this boat, you go 3-4 knots, bring her up about 1,000. They hit the bottom. She's so heavy. It just keeps going because it's so heavy. The inertia it doesn't take it as much effect on it, which is good. That's what you want. You want a steady. When you have to set out fast, a lot of things can happen while you're trying to put them down. They can flip over. You can be setting too fast. If you go too slow, they hit the bottom. They can mud up like an anchor. And then once they mud up, the mud's in the back of the drudge, and then it don't catch right till you get it clear. It's a lot of stuff that can happen. But a heavy boat, slow and heavy when you're dragging something, is good. It's good. So all wood, steel, shrimp trawlers and wood shrimp trawlers are good. They're steady. They're heavy. They lay good. They work good. They work good in the water. They may not look pretty, but they work good. Some of them.
What's your family's relationship been like with the boat builders in this area? You mentioned Willard Norris.
I met Willard Norris only one time. He lived in Deltaville. I met him about 5 years ago. And Wes, Mr. Robbins, that's putting a house on, took me there to meet him. And he was in his late 90s. I think he passed a couple years ago. Great guy. He built, if you see the boat, the Rainbow Chaser, that wins a lot of races down in the area, like at Harborfest and different areas, he built that boat. Okay, it has a lot of dead rise to it, and it's pretty fast hull. He was known for building a lot of smaller skiffs, wood skiffs and stuff. Other than that, I don't know that much about him. There was Edward Diggs, and I can't even touch on all, but they were all previous to my life. My dad knew all those guys. And the guy that built boats in this shop, which was, oh man, I told you I'm terrible with names. Francis Smith. He worked here for years, and he built boats in his shop. The reason this little piece is on the back is you see why. See the boat? They were building smaller boats, and when they started to expand, they just had to put a little addition on there so they could get the door shut, because they wanted to go from this size boat to that size boat. They wanted to, expand, so they were trying to expand. And then I don't know if they moved over because that metal building was part of this place when it was when they were building. I don't think they built. And I think that was mainly built for that building was for repairs, for fiberglass repairs. But they built a lot of boats in here, and they used that wood shop. You had Roy and Francis Smith, and Bobby still works over there as a great master fiberglass woodworking guy. But he's great with glass and painting. He's the last one that he's still on that side over there. But yeah, a lot of stuff got built in here. Francis Smith was the one that built boats here, repaired a lot of boats. They didn't, I wouldn't say they turned out as many boats here as say Edward Diggs did, or there's a lot of other well-known boat builders from Virginia, but they did build boats in here. Francis Smith, after they stopped building boats here and just repairing boats, I believe he built a shop at his house down in Bena, like you're going, you know where Bena is, down Mark Pine Road. And he built boats up until his grandson is good friends with my son. And I think he was still dabbling with it up till like a year or so ago. Last big boat that I know that he built was, it was a clam boat. The guy didn't want it or something didn't work out. It turned into a pleasure boat. And it's down at the Yacht Haven, and it's called something Rock. It's a green boat. It's a charter boat now, but it's a beautiful boat. I can't think of the name of it. The guy in Gloucester here owns it. But yeah, he's an ageable person now. He probably feels like pulling on all that and doing it. But that's a dying art. Now, Mr. Robbins, he can build boats, but it's an arduous process. Wayne Hudgens down in Horn Harbor in Matthews, Horn Harbor Marina, I saw on Facebook that they were going to attempt to build a wood boat. I say attempt because I don't know if they're going to do it or not. He told me they bought the lumber and they were talking about it for years, but they put it on Facebook. They were going to do it. So I don't know the size, but that would be the first one that I've heard of being built. My mother's side of the family, her sister's husband and my cousin on my mother's side of the family never were associated with water other than just being around it. They're from Matthews, but they're master woodworking cabinets, building stairways and homes, and just anything they put their hands to, they could do it. Just type of people, they could look at this boat, and he would just walk in here, make a few measurements, and he'd build you a lifelike model of it in a short period of time. Or he would rebuild this boat. He has built several boats just to do it, and we have a boat, if you notice, it's over here to the side that we bought. It's on the outside. The name of the boat was it was Billy Lett's boat. He passed 2 years ago. We bought the boat to get the rigging off of it, all the gear off of it, and someone was getting ready to ditch it. So we got it, saved it. I didn't know if the boat was worth saving as a vessel. And so I asked my cousin, did they want to save it? And he said, no, it was a little bit more work than what he was looking for, that they thought they would build their own boat. So he's wanting to do it. And he doesn't want to drive. I would let him use the shop. They're building a shop to build it in, so it's just like a bucket list thing. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody is building wood boats as a means of working on Chesapeake Bay. It's all going fiberglass because it's less maintenance. Yep.
Does anyone else have questions at this point?
All right.
Thank you so much for
Yes, sir.
sharing that.
You came all the way down here from Florida just to
As part of a project with Jessica, yes.
and
with
you're
Dr. Taylor.
with you.